Pushkin.
I would love to start at the beginning. I remember one time you told me that you had like African, Choctaw, Irish, and Mongolian.
A little Cherokee in there too with the Choctaw.
Yeah.
But I don't bring all my guns out right away, or arrows to infinity. Yeah. Well, what happened was, let's see, a putrid slave ship came over here and brought some people, but before, my elders were already here. Sally Sunflower White Cloud was my great-grandmother, and I have her songs. And then on Mary Flower's side, that's on my grandfather's side, Sally Sunflower White Cloud. On my mother's side, there was Mary Flowers, who was married to Bud McComb from Ireland. And I don't know a lot about the direct brothers and the Mongolian. I asked my grandmother, where did we come from? And she said, Mongolia. And then I looked at a map and somebody told me that the Bering Strait, they walked across the Bering Straits to get over here because there was a time when you could walk across. Okay? So we go far back, yeah. And but my great-great-grandmother was Hagar, right? And Dorothy knows my history because she went down south to Mississippi and did the serious digging and went behind the counter and went into the archives. The problem is that Hagar, this is deep. No one responds to it, but I need to bring it out. She was taken at 10 years old from her parents down in Mississippi by a slave owner up in Bolivar, Tennessee, Needham Ingram, and he proceeded to rape on her, 10-year-old girl.
Jesus.
Pedophile stuff. And at 13, she had my great-grandfather, Ben Ingram, Sr., and this guy had the nerve, when his daughter got married with his white wife, to give my great-great-grandmother and her child, Ben, as a wedding gift to his daughter. So, man, I got some serious beefs about this stuff that's going on. And it's still going on, and I'm kind of blowing fuses. As a young man, I blew fuses. Now, I can't afford to blow fuses, so what I have to do now is to go back on the self and make some music that can heal the world. But that's naive because I thought I was doing that when I was a young man. And some people heard it. But in 2000, Master Higgins, Billy Higgins, said he wanted to come up to visit us at our compound. And he wanted us to do some work that was that he could only do with me. So he brought all of his drums and all of his instruments, guitars from Africa, from all that Moorish stuff. And we began to go at it for about a week. Dorothy made the wonderful veggies for us. At the time he showed up, I had been fasting for a couple of weeks. And I told him that I was going to go back into the forest and give it up again. And he's 2 years older than me, and I met him when I first came out here in 56 at a jam session where he was there and Ornette was there. And he and I had a bonding instantly. Ornette came to this jam session, and he played, but I was new in town, and there's a place called the Stadium Club over by USC. Now that I look back on USC, man, there's some stuff that's very disturbing to me that I had to do my own personal research on. I got so many balls in the air. But anyway, so Ornette was let up on the stage, and they were playing What Is This Thing Called Love? So what Ornette played was the etymology of love, and they invited him off the bandstand.
Wow.
Because he wasn't adhering to just running the changes. He was talking about the real deal. And I heard it, and I loved something about it. He had these suspenders on, and he had this homemade outfit that was very special. We used to go to a tailor in Memphis called Paul the Tailor, and there was another one called Colette's. They were both on Beale Street. So I had my stuff that I had to change up real soon. I had 25-inch knees and 18-inch bottom. I remember that, and I was specific about that. But when I got out here, they were wearing those little, chinos, okay. So my stuff was too out for school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find a way to make my stuff work anyway, because I was in it, but I wasn't of it. And I had some songs to sing. And when I was a little boy, Duke Ellington and Johnny Hodges and those people stayed at our house because we had a large house and there weren't adequate hotels for these musicians. So the lady from the theater called my mother and said, can you help us out and accommodate some quality people?
Wait, so Duke Ellington stayed at your house?
Yes, so did Lionel Hampton, so did special various people. I met Quincy Jones during that period. He was playing trumpet with Lionel Hampton. Quincy he was 5 years older than myself, but he was a little bitty little skinny guy, and I was a little bitty little skinny guy, and I was about 9, and so he would have been 5. He was about 16.
Yeah.
And so we had a simpatico, and when I came to California, he would turn people on to me to do sessions and stuff. He was like, in those days for the jazz community, he was like networker, and he knew where stuff was. And people would call me from Capitol, your company, and different companies, and I'd go do sessions. That was very special, and I always remember that. And I think he's the one who recommended me to Cannonball Adderley when Yusef Lateef left. Wow. That was in '64. And Joe Zawinul was in that band, Sam Jones, Louis Hayes, and Cannon's brother Nat. So I played with that sextet for going on 2 years. And then I had a bee in my bonnet that I need to expressivo my stuff, personal music that I had to make. Because when I was with Chico, I'd replaced Eric Dolphy.
Chico Hamilton,
sorry, thank you. And what happened was that Chico made me music director.
Right.
And so I'd written all this music. When I was at Cannonball, he said, we'll play your music too. Wow. But he also he was a raconteur and stuff, and he was good at the microphone and handling people and stuff like that, and cordiality. Anyway, so I was there for a couple of years. Then when I started my own band, when I was with Cannonball, this Keith Jarrett had heard me in Boston. He was going to school there at Berkeley. And he was playing upstairs, and we were playing downstairs at... He said, I want to play with you. I said, well, when the time comes, I'll let you know. And then when the time came, Gabor Szabo, who had been playing with me with Chico, I called him, and Pete LaRocca, and Albert Stenson. Oh. Wonderful bassist that people don't know because he left early too. He left in his 20s, early 20s. Around that age that guys leave town. But he was even younger than that, and he and Bobby Hutcherson had grown up in Pasadena, and he was a genius, and Scott LaFaro and Charlie Hayden were the young lions, but Sparky, Albert Stenson, had a strong sound, real woody, and he loved Wilbur Ware, and so he came from there. Anyway, so...
there's so many places I want to go back to.
Yeah, so, but
you talk about Higgins coming up to your house.
Yeah, so Higgins was playing at that jam session, too. Everybody loved Billy Higgins because no matter how you played, behind the beat, on the beat, whatever, he could make you a tailor-made suit because that's what he fix your stuff right up, They finally let me play at the end of the session because I'm a young kid sitting over there with an alto, and that was my instrument that I started off. And finally they let me on the bandstand, but it was strange because they had invited Ornette off the prior set. But Ornette comes up to me with his splendid outfit that he had made at home. And he said, you can really play the saxophone, but that don't have a lot to do with music. And so I said, wow, I'd been in Memphis with George Coleman and Hank Crawford, Frank Strozier, Booker Little, my master. And all the cats in Memphis, and it was a rich tradition. Phineas Newborn was our J.S. Bach, and he was our hero in Memphis, and he always was extremely special. By Ornette saying that, he didn't say it with hostility. It wasn't harsh. It was, where he talks. Yeah, you can really play saxophone, but that don't have a lot to do with music. So it was sweet. So somehow he and I lived several blocks from each other. He would come over to my house. I'd go over to his house, and we began to go at it, with the music. And I was coming from a lot of modern tradition. It's like the old guys in Memphis said to me, you're playing all those notes, because I'd heard Bird, So you're playing all those notes, but they don't mean anything without a beautiful sound. So I started practicing long tones. Phineas Newborn heard me on an amateur show, and I won first prize. I was about 9 or 10, and he said, "You need lessons bad," when I walked into the wings. He takes me around the corner on Beale Street to Irving Reason, a great alto player, and left me and said, "You need lessons." And so I didn't get rich before I learned how to play. I had to focus on the music. And so Irving was great for me. Phineas kept on top of me, and then maybe I was 12 or 13. He put me in band with his brother Calvin, and in his father's band, playing at the Plantation Inn over across the river in West Memphis, Arkansas. So we played this several nights a week, 7 nights, 6, 7. And then I had gigs with all those blues guys too. And my favorite was Howlin Wolf, Junior Parker, Johnny Ace, B.B. King, Roscoe Gordon, on and on. Anyway, so I had lots of deep experiences with those blues guys, because they could reach the back of the hall or the schoolhouse or wherever we were playing, and they were communicators, And I somehow got infected by that, because I was moved by how women would throw their panties on the stage and do stuff of surrender, without. And I'm a little kid, I'm not ready for that lane yet, but I saw something in there that was frightening and intriguing and interesting, So I didn't have the chops yet for any of that. But
was Hubert Sumlin with Wolf at that time?
Yeah. Different cats played with Wolf, Anyway,
it's like talking to Quincy Jones. It's like you've done everything. You've known everyone.
No, but Quincy, he was a special guy. I don't know him now. I'm sure if we saw each other. No, I do. I shouldn't talk like that. I was playing at Montreux a few years ago, and he came backstage. And he was pulling on my coat when I walked near the edge of the stage.
And he remembered you from Memphis.
Throughout he's remembered.
Yeah.
We're cordial, and it's just that I've been drunk with this music, and what my idea was to change the world with the beauty of music, and I'm still at it. But I went away for a while because I blew fuses as a young man, because the setup was so unfair and so gross that, it didn't work for me. And I began to medicate myself too, so I had a lot of stuff I had to deal with. But when I first got to New York, I checked into the Alvin Hotel where Prez had lived, and Prez died there. And
Lester Young, yeah.
Correct. And Lester Young, yes, my hero. I've gone around the world in a plane, but I've come back to Prez because he was the poet of the music. That's why when you hear this new record, Don, that we made, he came and visited me, And Prez died on March 15, 1959, I believe. And I just turned 21. Whenever I turn 21, the chronology may elude me. But I think I have some mystical notion that Prez said, "Okay, I'm leaving town, but let's see what you can do with this stuff." So I have notions like that, not illusions of grandeur. I got that when I was a little kid, but Phineas nipped that in the bud. But anyway, I'm just like I'm a lone man on the mountain, as you know, and I'm trying to sing this song. And I told Master Higgins when he came up at that time, in 2000, that I was getting ready to go back into the forest. You know, I've been in Big Sur for a decade or more. And he said, well, I said, nobody cares about this music. And he said, fuck them, we care. It was such a strong rebuke. And Master Higgins was always very special, as I just told you. And everybody wanted Billy to play with him, you know. You know that record Lee Morgan made, Sidewinder?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he and Billy was on that record along with Barry Harris, and I think Higgins told me something also almost had a profound effect on me, like my great-great-grandmother. It was like they were up in Harlem looking for the man because they needed their medicine, and they were in bad shape. And they went to every bar in Harlem, and Sidewinder was playing on the box everywhere. It was the fuel. It was lifting up the whole dharma of the planet was being held up by that song. So what happened was that they couldn't find the man. He wasn't in any bar. And they finally found him. And he was sitting there very erudite, you know, with his vaunts and stuff. And they said, we need our meds. And they said, but we're $2 short. And he looked at them and he said, I'm sorry, I can't help you guys. You know? And after these guys lit up the planet with Sidewinder, he can't help them. And, you know, so there's a lot of injustice, you know, personal that, you know, not to mention the foulness of man's inhumanity to man and throwing rocks at each other for thousands of years. And this stuff has been bothering me lately, and I've got to shake it off because this morning it hit me real hard, you know. I have friends all around the world, and folks aren't being treated right, you know. And these giant politicians, they pad their pockets and stuff, but we need sages to help humanity, you know. So so back to my song. I'm making this music to heal the planet. So and I keep coming up short, you know, and it's troubling to my nervous system, to be candid with you.
Can I tell you something, Charles?
Sure.
I heard you play for the first time in the mid-'60s. I saw you play live.
How old were you?
14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
And your music impacted my life so tremendously. So you may not see the full impact. No, maybe the whole society didn't change, but on a personal level, just the tone of your instrument. The tone of your instrument is one of the constants in my life, you know, in my adult life. And it has such soothing and healing properties. You may not see that part of it. That may not turn up at a concert. That certainly won't turn up in a newspaper. But the inner joy and peacefulness from that. And I'm just one person, man. I know you sold 1 million copies of Forest Flower.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'm probably here because of you, because the whole recording industry was run like a plantation system as far as I could see in my lifetime early on. I started out at Columbia, and then I was on Atlantic, and then when I did Moon Man, I think I was on Cap, which was, I don't know who distributes that. Well, Don, the thing is that I was reading something the other day, and it told me that jazz music sells 2% of the records sales. I don't want to believe that or accept that. It's kind of like I would wonder why people don't vote to have somebody who could have more caring, at least, because it's all corrupt. But what I'm saying is that it hurts me You're going to have to edit this because I'm sure not much of it's useful. But
It's beautiful, man. It's like a solo. You did a
no,
whole
but-
thing, but came back to
no,
Higgins,
but-
so it was brilliant.
No, the thing is
It's
that
all beautiful.
the thing is that I'm troubled by the condition of the condition. And, Dorothy going down south with my cousin Shalene, and they going back there. It's a funny thing. Dorothy told me when she and my cousin went to the archives or where the record county hall where the records are kept. They said they wanted to look into the records, and the woman said, "Uh-oh, they're here," Yeah, because they knew they were dirty, and they said, "Uh-oh, they've come to see the records." And so she looked up Sally Sunflower, White Cloud, and all these indigenous folks that I have some blood with. And I love all people. When I came out here to Cali, I was about to tell you about my USC experience, and I got upset with myself the other day at some of my research. There's this guy named Rufus von Kleinschmidt, who was he had been a president of USC, I think from 21 to 46 or somewhere in the 20s, 40s. And he now, when I went to SC, I started in 56, and there was a genius in the dorm. His name was Milton Oldham, and he was from Asbury Park, New Jersey. And he was so brilliant. He was like lit up. He was a little guy, about 5'2" or 3", but he was like a light bulb, and he would do everybody's homework and help everybody in the dorm. I got to the dorm, Aeneas Hall, in the summer of 56 because I was run out of town. I was playing in West Memphis with Willie Mitchell, and those girls liked us a lot. It was a white dance hall called Danny's, and we'd have to run back across the bridge in Willie's Pontiac car, whatever it was, doing 120 or whatever it would do, because we were always being chased and stuff, And my stepfather sold cars, and in the black part of the dealership, he would get referrals and stuff, and, he'd take care of the guys, with some change, And somebody called him from the police station and said, "They're coming to arrest your son tomorrow night, because they've been fooling around with those girls." And so when he goes to work tomorrow night, just want to let you know, he's on the list. At which point my mother said, "No, he's not." And my stepfather also worked on the railroad, Pullman Porter stuff. So he put me in a first class drawing room A on the plane, on the train, and took me cross country.
That's how you ended up in L.A.
I got there in the summer. I was supposed to start in the fall. But when I got there, I'd had a lot of solicitations from fraternities offering me to take residence there for summer because they would collect bread. They have some tenants in the house, till the boys get back. So, and then when I told some guys in the dorm that all those fraternities had been trying to send me solicitations, they laughed. I didn't quite understand. When I checked into the dorm, it was summertime. There were no people of color there. So what they did was they put me with a Hawaiian. You dig? Ken Purtle. And his mother was Hawaiian. His father was a Howley from England or something. This guy later committed suicide. He joined one of those fraternities. But what happened was it backfired on him because he couldn't go fully with the program. And so when you
couldn't shake not being fully white.
Sorry?
You couldn't shake not being fully white and fully...
Somewhere in there, because it was a very racist time in the 50s. It still is, but it was so overt then. But getting back to von Kleinschmidt, Rufus von Kleinschmidt, whenever I've told people about him, so you have to be careful because there's some stuff out there protecting him. No one has ever taken that in an interview for me, and I've often wondered why. So I said, I'm going to look up, I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. Milton Oldham was in a club called the Squires, and they're going to have a parade for the alumni. And so the alumni, Rufus Von Clifton, has to preview the parade to see how it's going. Mm-hmm. And when he saw Milton in the parade, he said, no, can't happen. So the alumni, we don't. And then I came to find out that he was a Nazi, and he'd gone over there and fraternized with Hitler and all those guys and stuff. And he denied it and kind of like that. And so somehow somebody would bring it up, and he would, we're going to do something about that. Never did anything about anything. And so the reason I'm telling you this now, you don't have to use this for the interview, but somebody has to know what's going on. And so I'm studying all this stuff. And then lo and behold, I did a lot of research that they've taken his name. After he was the president for those 10, 20 years, he became, what do you call it? In lawyering, they call it of counsel. Mm-hmm. He's upstairs. He's controlling the dance, Mm-hmm. So he wouldn't let Milton. He said, no, Milton can't march, with the Squires. And that was very hurtful because Milton was a pure soul, and he wasn't even tainted by, I don't think he even, growing up in Asbury Park, that's different than growing up in Memphis. I don't think I don't think he even knew that he was black. He was so well modulated, Mm-hmm. I know. So what I'm getting at is that he was a guy, man. And we used to hang out in the dorm in these rooms and stuff, and we would always end up in Milton's room because he was the like magnet, he was keeping the Dharma, upholding the Dharma like Prez and Bird and Train and all of that, So they just said, I keep looking and I find out just recently, USC has taken his name off of a building and they put a Native American guy's name on there. Too late, but anyway, pardon that, but stuff has been bothering me lately, and I'm checking it out. But then I am trying to sing a song about tenderness. I am a tender warrior. I'm not going to lie to anybody, but tenderness, that takes me back to Prez and then Prez was messed up in the Army, DB blues, detention barracks blues and stuff, and it's like, when will it end? When will it quit? The beautiful thing I'm trying to say to you, Dawn, is that I went away. I left Atlantic. They blackballed me. I couldn't record with anyone else before anyone else because they said I still owed them records. And anyway, but I came out here. I made my getaway. Beginner's change, nothing serious. But I did buy a home in Malibu Colony, which was interesting in 1969 when I left.
You left Atlantic and
I left New York in the music industry because I had blown too many fuses, and I had left Atlantic. I wouldn't give them any more records. They went from giving. At one point, I wanted to move up to Woodstock with Bob Dylan was a neighbor in the village, and he moved up to Woodstock, and Robbie Robinson, the band, those guys were friends and fans and all of that. And so I'd go up and hang out with Robbie and stay at his house, and he'd take me over to Dylan's place. And the thing is that, so Dylan comes up to me. We were hanging out at Grossman's house. Dylan comes up to me and said, Robbie said you moving out to the West Coast. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, don't do that. That place is going to fall into the ocean. And I said, well, Bob, you've written some nice lyrics, but so be it. I've got to do it my way. Then one day I'm at my house on the beach, and I look out there, and there's the band standing almost near my house taking a photo, So I went out and saw Levon and Robbie and all the guys and Rick and stuff. So I said, what's going on, guys? And they said, well, Bob just brought us out here. I said, oh, the same guy who told me don't move out here because it's, too far out of the village? No, that's a different story. So I always follow my own bells, and that leads me to what I just slipped. To when I moved to where Dorothy and I live now in Montecito, I said to the guys, I'm going to buy this piece of land out here, in the sky. They said, you don't want to move out there. It's too far out of the village. I said, well, I used to play with Howlin Wolf in Junior Park, and they used to sing, I'm going to move way on the outskirts of town. Don't want nobody coming out there messing around. So I knew what was good for me, the Iceman, the Mailman, So anyway, now everybody wants to live out there, and the girl who serially swaps houses and stuff, and different people move. They all move near me. And Dorothy's made a beautiful world for me there. And I do want to be able to live in my lifetime with my creativity. And this music is 10 cents a dance. Don't get me wrong. But it's shiny, but it doesn't. They just raise my insurance 30%, this and that. Back in the inflation or whatever, inflation blues or whatever. So I just thought, wow. But anyway, so what happened was a friend, Steve Cloud, who was managing Keith Jarrett, called me and said, man, ECM wants you to come over there, because I was in Big Sur and I wasn't recording or even interested. He said, man, ECM, Manfred really wants you. So I said, well, what does that mean? He said, it means that you'll get a straight count, but it'll be the slow burn. It won't be, the big program. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, if it's honest and straight. So I went with that. And, but I wrote a lot of music, and I needed to have my children, my masters, so to say. And we could never work that out with Manfred. And although it was supposed to have been an enlightened situation, it didn't get enlightened enough for me. And so we had problems. And also I got to the point where with Higgins and the records Dorothy and I were producing all the records after the first ones. And we made a record, Fish Out of Water was the first one with Manfred. And they told me he was a strange guy. So I said, well, I'm just going to do my music. And I played about 5 pieces. And he pushed the talk button and said, don't you want to come in and hear something? So I went into the studio, and I had tears because what I had heard in my mind's ear, it was on the tape. And there was a guy named Jan Erik Kungshag, I think was his name, Norwegian I think a Norwegian guy. And he had captured it, because before it was always, engineers were I wasn't getting close enough to the music. So that touched me very much. And if you ever listen to that record, Fish Out of Water, you can hear every instrument clearly, and the whole thing is what I'm trying to get at. It's all a union, it's an amalgam of spirits on a human journey, and that's what we were doing. But we could get only so far. Then here you come along, and I have a friend in New York, Nate Chennon. He's a journalist, and he said, Don Was told me, you could bust this story. He said, Don Was told me that when he takes over Blue Note, the first artist he wants to sign is Charles Lloyd. And then you came up with Flowers and Sweets and stuff, and a pure heart. But by this time, I was fragile, and it's hard to believe what anyone says, because we live in our own world and we don't bother people, and make sure you leave us alone, Finally, what didn't work in America finally works with you, because you have this big ears and appreciation and big heart, and you didn't do me wrong, and you came and you let me keep my children, and you were in it for the music, and you wanted to see the best of that. And that's why we drive down here, because I'm at a different stage where I'm not ready to go anywhere now, because now they got me in the medical clinics, and I got medical problems, and I didn't have that stuff before, never. And I haven't done non-prescription drugs in many, many decades, so I didn't know why me, but I guess chronology is some strange stuff. I haven't seen anybody get out of here alive yet. It's something that I'm interested in, but I haven't seen anybody pull it off. I did learn to swim underwater. I was a junior lifeguard. Ahmed Jamal was really touched by that, because Jamil Nasser played bass with him, and he's from Memphis, and he told him, and he grew up with Phineas, and he told him all about my junior lifeguard stuff. But I would practice swimming underwater, and I'm trying to learn how to breathe. It's a concept, but it's not a reality. But I keep working on it, and I almost pulled it off sometimes, where I thought I was staying under for a long, long time. And I went to Toledo in Ohio, and I won diving contests and stuff like that. I told you about Ezel. There was this guy in my neighborhood. We could only go to the swimming pool 2 or 3 months in the summer, because they said we got to give them that at least, that stuff. And they had their pools all year round, and we'd go to Mississippi out of Memphis, and there was clear water, and the grand stuff for the other tribe. And so I thought this was pretty out there. But so we couldn't wait for the pool to open, and my mother was very wise. That was earlier property when I was 8 or 9. She bought a house. She bought some lots across the street from the Orange Mound playground. So I had access, and it was beautiful. I had almost a little world. My grandfather was a wise guy, and he had 1,600 acres in Mississippi. And so he knew Faulkner and all that stuff, and I would go through his orchards and all of that, But what I'm getting at that's really touching is that we couldn't wait for the pool to open, so somebody knew how to get up under the wire fence in the back. And so we would go and we would swim at night, because they got the water in there, but they're not going to open it for a week or two. So we would go every night and swim. But Ezel went up on the diving board, the high board, and one night we just couldn't wait, and he wanted to do a 2.5, And so he could do a 1.5, but he wanted to make sure he could do a 2.5. And he went up on the board, and there was no water in the pool. Oh, and so Ezel didn't come back the same. He stayed with us, but he was always kind of laughing and grinning, like he knew what was happening in another way. And I'd walk to school past his house through a field every day, but he'd just be out there grinning at us all the time. That kind of hurt me a lot, If the facilities had been as they should have been available, we wouldn't have had to be such wild guys, One last thing I'd tell you about Higgins and Ornette, because they were at this session. So, at this jam session I told you about, Higgins told me that he and Don Cherry were in Watts playing stickball out in the street. Did I ever tell you this? Don?
No.
So this is really good to know. And they were young musicians, and they grew up in L.A., and they heard this wild sound coming from several blocks away, and they dropped their sticks and balls and started running to the sound. And they didn't know what it was, but it was compelling. And when they got there, it was Ornette in a music store trying out a reed.
Wow.
So that was the start of them, because Ornette, it was the call. Mm-hmm. They heard it, and they ran to it,
Clarion call.
And so Ornette told me once, he said, man, if you get 4 guys and they can believe in an ideal, he said, you can, he didn't say change the world, but he said you can you can achieve a lot. I don't know how he put it, because he and I would have all these discussions and such. But I've always loved that story that Higgins told me about that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What was it like to play with him?
Play with
Ornette
or Higgins?
No, Ornette.
It was great, man. See, as he said to me, you can really play the saxophone, but that doesn't have a lot to do with music. He had his own cosmology. He could do the traditional thing. He had heard Bird. He'd gone through that. But he was from Texas, Fort Worth. And he'd play with those rhythm and blues bands too. And the guys take his horn and break it and beat him up and stuff on the road. But he never stopped either. He just kept going. And Phineas Newborn was our J.S. Bach in Memphis. And he had me to learn all the standards and the changes and the harmonic modulations and how do you call it? Play Cherokee in B flat. Now let's play it in A. Let's play it in E. And George Coleman was like a Santini kind of guy, or sergeant major on your case, So we had a serious school there in Memphis. And Booker Little was my best friend in high school. And he's the one when I first got to New York. I did tell you that he said, "Where are you staying?" I told you that, right?
Tell us
so
again,
anyway,
yeah.
Ornette's basics weren't the tightest, but he had his cosmology, and as I said, he was playing the etymology of what is this thing called love. He wasn't playing the changes, And so he had moved into harmolodics, as he called it, and he was playing the sound of the music, And so we would argue, and he said, "Well, you're not telling the story, singing the song." And I said, "Well, but you can't read or something." He was a little shaky there, And he said, "Well, I'll fix him." He walked over to my house. He had a Studebaker car. I don't know if you ever remember that. They were made in the 50s, where the front and the back, you can't tell which is which. And I remember that we were at a jam session at the Chris Club over by Wrigley Field here in L.A. in Watts. And we would go to these jam sessions, and we would come out, we'd be so high from the music that Ornette was taking us home in his car. But because you can't tell which is the front and which is the back, he backed up and backed over his horn. And because we were high from the music, and the relative kind of recedes, and it's no longer what you think it is. It's not solid. The relative is not like the absolute. The absolute is, we're all spirits on a human journey. And when you play this indigenous art form, something happens that takes you to another place where you don't have any limitations like the relative. And so that's what draws us to this music. It's a music of freedom and wonder. So by him backing over his alto, and he was working day job down at Bullock's or something, driving an elevator.
Bullock's Wilshire, like the department store?
One of downtown, yeah. It wasn't Wilshire then, it was downtown, main part of downtown. But he would go down and park the freight elevator in the basement and practice, So he, what you have to do because you love the music so much, And I'm drunk with that. It's like Duke Ellington told my mother, She said he wants to be a musician so bad, And Johnny Hodges said, well, and Duke said, well, no. And they both said no when my mother said he wants to be a musician. And they said no. And so my mother said, well, why? He said, this life is too hard. Make that boy be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief. None of this stuff, And so, but by this time I'm bit by the cobra, so there's nothing I could do but play the music. Years later, I was 9 or 10 or something like that. Years later, in my mid-20s with the band with Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette and Cecil McBee, we were in Antibes, and we kind of tore the place up. And Duke said, well, if that guy keeps stirring this soup, one day he's going to have something. But what he didn't understand, I was the guy he was trying to save from doing this, But I was beyond saving, Now, had I been a doctor or lawyer, Indian chief, I wouldn't have met Dorothy, and we we wouldn't be on our path together, you know. So it's like, who are you going to serve, you know? So in that we would practice and play and all that stuff. I always loved his cosmology, though. And, you know, he could write these tunes, and they're beautiful, man. And so one day we had a particular argument. He always was trying to tell me the chord can't resolve and stuff like that, you know. So we had 5-hour phone conversations, and we were just so deep off into the...
You said a chord can't resolve?
Yeah, he didn't believe in that. Yeah. So anyway, he was trying to explain to me why a chord can't resolve, you know. Anyway, so he just take... Stanley Crouch would laugh, and he'd say to me, man, you know, Ornette talks all that stuff. He said, but when he starts playing that music, he said, it makes you cry, and you can hear children on the playground playing. You know, he can take you right to a state, you know, Lonely Woman and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so this particular day, he walks over to my house, and he takes out his horn. We must have serious arguments or something around that period. He takes out his horn, and he plays the lowest note, B flat, on the horn, and the next note he played was the highest note on the horn, F. And he chromatically brought them together like that, but it was like, ah! Like what happened to Cherry and Billy Higgins. Mm-hmm. He squashed the whole of the molecular structure. So at that point, you understand what I say he did?
Yes.
Lowest note, highest note, and then you come up the next lowest note, the next lowest high note. Mm-hmm. And he did it all in a nanosecond, and I never heard anyone do that in my life, at which point I bowed down, and we never had another argument.
Wow.
Because I wasn't about to argue with somebody who can, it's kind of like Bird discovered the atom and train smashed it. It was kind of, we had a conversation like that, you know. Yeah.
Did you spend time with Eric Dolphy too?
I did. Now, Eric Dolphy is an interesting guy. He mastered the saxophone and flute and all the clarinets and stuff. There's a guy named Buddy Collette who was the mentor to first Charlie Mingus, Eric Dolphy, myself, James Newton. He a lot of people I don't even know. And so he helped us all. And Buddy Collette was, he was a mentor. He told... Mingus used to play cello, and a little bow-legged kid be walking by his house. He said, if you get a bass, I'll put you in the band. Mingus said, yeah, okay. So he gets the bass. And then with Eric, he began to teach Eric and get him up. Because, see, Buddy Collette is the first guy who got in the studios because he could play all the flutes and clarinets and woodwind. And so the white guys in the studio in those days, some of them wanted to be fair, and they wanted to have some brothers in there. You know, it was kind of lonely in there because they had heard Lester Young and Bird and Lady Day and all that. So they got Buddy in there. But the thing is that Eric, he would send Eric to different teachers, and Eric got so off into the etymology of the thing of the mechanics of mastering the instruments that Buddy told him one day, okay, no more. That's it. No more studying with all these esoteric masters. That's it. And so, you know, yeah, we played in Gerald Wilson's big band together. Right. 2 altos, Harold Land, Walter Benton. I don't remember who was playing baritone. Elmo Hope was out here for a time. He played in that group with us.
Wow.
And he came out to L.A. from New York. That's what Ornette said to me. He said, man, you know, I'm tired of just playing these gigs. He said, I write all this music. He said, I could be like Beethoven. I could be home with my woman, you know, having a good time. I don't, you know, and down at the symphony hall, they could be playing my music. And sure enough, one time he was playing at the 5 spot, and Leonard Bernstein jumped up on the stage and hugged him, you know, told him how beautiful his music was. Now, you think about that. If Ornette had jumped up on the stage at Philharmonic Hall or somewhere and told Lenny he didn't play Wagner that well tonight, or told him he did a good job, he'd probably been arrested. You know, it's kind of like that stuff over in Israel or October 6th. If brothers had gone in there with some machetes and stuff, them brothers had all been mowed down, man. But instead they switch the game around. So when you see too much stuff like that, it hurts. And fair play or something, it's not in the game. So when I come out of the house, I wear my beanie cap and my jacket and stuff so I can be warm just in case Caesar sends the gendarmes down to mess with us, And it's weird the things that a brother has to think about, It's that's why I live like I do, I live quiet. The wolf's at the door, and you try to do the best you can for me. But I didn't know that my lifestyle would be so expensive. It's kind of expensive to live simply, and that's the way we live with no neighbors and acreage, But
can you talk a little bit about your friendship with Booker Little?
Yeah, Booker Little, he and I met at about 13 or 14. Booker, first of all, the creators. That's the other thing about God, There's something beautiful about taking care of His children, If I wonder though why the game is still rigged, but so I get to New York and it's a Monday night and Booker's playing down at Birdland, and I was staying across the street at the Alvin Hotel, and I went down. I said, "Booker, I'm here." He said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I'm staying at the Alvin." He said, "No, you're not. You're coming home with me." So he was 22, and he took me home with him. And I was ready to jump into the fast lane because I'm in Mecca now, in Apple, And he said, "No, it's not about that. It's about character." What I came to find out was that he was a realized soul. He left several months later at 23, and he took me apart because in high school, we would go to the library and listen to Bartók string quartets and stuff and discuss music. The thing about Bartók is that he would take his folk themes and he would put Fibonacci kind of numbers, stuff they had gotten from Egypt, and he would make these formulations, and it was very beautiful what he was doing. And that's what I do. I take my folk songs, and if you listen to my new record, what's my new record called? I almost said Which Way is East, but that's not the new record. That's the one with Higgins. The sky will still be there tomorrow. We may not be there tomorrow, but the sky will be. And I'm trying to... so Booker, he straightened me out, and he told me about character, and he was an enlightened soul. And I have not met anyone in this music as advanced as he was spiritually. And he set me on the path. I had some detours. Booker left at 23. He came home at Christmas time. He was a year ahead of me in school, and he's 2 weeks younger than me. April 2nd would be his birthday. We have to make a tribute to him every year. So he came home from school at 18. We were both 18, and Clifford Brown had died. And Clifford was his hero, and he was killed in a car accident playing with Max Roach on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And Booker was crying. We were hanging out. And he said, Clifford's gone. And Clifford was 25. And Booker said, why couldn't it have been me? He was 18. So you don't know no young people ready to sacrifice or to put themselves in harm's way like that to do. And sure enough, Booker left at 23. But the Creator had prepared him. He was advanced. He had a sister, Vera Little, who was an opera singer. Dorothy and I have a picture from our world travels. We have a picture with Vera with the Pope. Wow. Yeah. So he comes from some deep stuff. And all of our stuff is very deep. The music, the stuff, I'm talking about Prayers and Bird and all of that, It's like I wanted to marry Lady Day and, give her the long driveway and stuff, and because she was singing just to me. So I put my radio on the pillow and I'd listen late at night. I could hear her, Booker also had Coleman Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins who was a master of modernity and the tenor saxophone, and he knew his harmonies. He also played cello. And he commissioned Booker to write music for an octet for him. The day they were in the recording studio, that was the day Booker left town. and everybody was looking for the music and looking for Booker. And I knew his lady Mathilde, and to this day, I saw the music on the piano, but the music has never been found, but he did write it. He also wrote the music for Train's Africa Brass and all the brass. And he did a beautiful thing, man. If you ever listen to Africa Brass, check it out. The brass said, they're doing Booker taught him how to do that,
Huh.
Yeah, there was a guy named Bob Northern, was a French horn player, and he was on that too. But so Booker, he was very modern, very, very special. He didn't have a big love for Ornette, though. And I was hoping that if he'd lived long enough that we could have bridged that gap. But Booker he took Eric on. Of course, Eric was very schooled, and Booker was very schooled. But Booker also was a wise man, and his music, that stuff he did out front on Candid with another friend of mine from California, Don Friedman, great pianist, and is on that record. I was so happy to see, and Eric Dolphy was on that record. I was happy to see Memphis and Cali all mixed up in there together.
Did you get what he said when he said it's about character? Did you get it right away?
No, what happened was that I heard it, but when I moved out here, I started studying Vedanta, and that's Sri Ramakrishna, and he was one of the last guys who came through here with the goods, and he was born 1838. He lived 50 years, so he left town in 1888. But he made 12 guys. Swami Vivekananda was his main cat that he made. He made all these guys. And he was so-called illiterate in India, but he had the sacred tablets inside, so he'd start. We were living in Big Sur, and I got deep off into Vedanta because I was studying the wisdom of the ancients, because I'm not going to go in the public way anymore and play. And I was playing outside the nature, the giant redwoods, and these beautiful clouds would come over and say hello to me, and the sun would break through. And I had all these birds and animals and mountain lions and deer and stuff would come around our property there. So I came down to Santa Barbara to the Vedanta bookstore, and I was asking some deep questions about the infinite. And this young nun said, well, I don't know about that. I don't know how to answer that. And then suddenly an old nun came out of the back of the bookstore, and she said, do you meditate? And I said, yes. I've been meditating for 20, 30 years. She said, has it changed your character? And there was Booker. It hit me, man. So Booker has been guiding me all this time. And when she says it changed your character, it was like playing this music, the lifestyle and how it's set up, and the setup of the world, and you playing in beer taverns, it's kind of a different milieu, And so I had to get off the bus, and go into the woods and to refine myself, because Booker had laid it on me. It's not about the fast lane. It's about character. Booker left at 23, and when I stayed with him, he was always cautioning me, I was in a marriage at that time that didn't work out. And when it didn't work out, Dorothy and I had met, but she had moved to Europe because she didn't want to be a part of breaking up some family or something. And when she heard I had gotten a divorce, she came back. And we've been together ever since, So it's like, but she also knows more cosmology about all this stuff than me. She knows that we lived in other lives together, and you can get her up here to talk about that stuff. She's wise, And Booker, and so what I'm getting at is it took me a long time to straighten up and fly right, And I'm so thrilled that his really beautiful thing a lot of guys can play a lot of stuff, but what I'm trying to do is sing a song and tell a story. And when the alignment is right, the work on my character, it enhances the beauty of my sound. Because the old guys told me those notes don't mean anything unless you have a beautiful sound. So I'm all my life working on my sound, And then the beautiful thing about Buddy Collette, he said to me, I know you want to play. I started teaching school when I graduated from SC. I didn't have any bread or anything. And all my friends had gone to New York, Ornette and Higgins and Scott LaFaro and Cherry and Charlie, and they had all left. So I was out here in California, and another pineapple would hit me on the head or something, and I wasn't into sleepwalking. So I couldn't wait to get back to New York. But the thing is that, lo and behold, I go east, I come back west, go east. So I go all around the globe, But I have a nest now, and I have a mate that's with me and cares about what we're doing. And so we live spiritual life, and it's quiet and simple. And then I had a notion about 3 years ago, before COVID hit, that I still wanted to change the world with the beauty of music. And lo and behold, COVID came in. And so it took us 3 years to make this record. And I got the right people to make it the right.
The response has been incredible. Have you read all the articles from all over the world?
I try not to read all that stuff. You know why? Because when you tell me it's gone triple platinum, I'll believe you. But right now it's still 10 cents a dance. And
well, that may not be the barometer of greatness. I don't know.
I know, but I'm trying to tell you that the wolf is knocking at the door, and we love our simple retreat, and I need you to pick up the tempo and find some way that I can get that thing see what happened to me in the 60s. We had a breakthrough because I had played Monterey Jazz Festival, and then I came into San Francisco to play a club called El Matador. And then there was a group up the street called The Committee, which was like Belushi and those guys. What were they called in Chicago?
Second City.
Second.
Yeah.
So they were like that. And these guys said, man, we don't even listen to jazz. We don't even like it. But, man, we come back to hear you guys every night after we close our theater down. They had their own theater up on Broadway. And the club was on Broadway. And one of the guys, Morgan Upton, he said, man, there's this place to Fillmore, and there's 2,000 kids over there laying on the floor listening to music. I think you should go over there and play one Sunday. I said, well, who plays there? He said, Muddy Waters. And I said, oh, McKinley Morganfield. I know those guys, and Chuck Berry and stuff, And so he took me over there, and I was supposed to play for a half hour, and hour and a half, they wouldn't let us off the stage. So Graham started booking us, Bill Graham. And then that circuit opened up for me. And it's kind of like FM radio became freeform. They'd play Grateful Dead, and they'd play me. The Grateful Dead was walking around with Dreamweaver. They loved that record, And then all those bands in San Francisco wanted to be on the same shows with us. Of course, all those guys are billionaires now, and I'm still out here trying to get the cart working, get my car out of the shop.
Did you want to lean into the success of Forest Flower and
No,
Dream?
No, hold it. Success, that's dangerous stuff, I love the music. I was told if I would play Forest Flower the same way with the same boring solo every night, they could get me over. But I like to go exploring every night, because when you go exploring, you don't come back the same. You find things. You find not diamond mines or gold mines. You find sandalwood forests and stuff like that. So I'm not wired probably for being the mediocre man is always at his best. I'm looking for something else, and what I'm looking for is looking for me. It's too late for me to change my stripes. I mean, look what Quincy did. He found, he was always on the path. But Michael Jackson and all that stuff he produced. And then he finds, so some people, but I can only focus on not nothing against what he's doing. He's a wise man, but he's seen it all, I think if you stay over here too long, you might get burned or something. And I haven't seen anybody, as I say, get out of here alive yet. And the way we live, it's very beautiful, but it's almost like my, what do you call it? It's attributed to my spiritual life. I'll just put it that way. And again, you asked me about Booker Little. Booker Little was the most evolved soul that's ever played this music. And here's the thing. We come through here, we sing our song, nobody knows us, and we're gone.
Is it, I'm 72. I'm starting to see some of my friends splitting. You're a few years older. You're 86. Is it weird being like one of the last guys standing from your era?
Last of the Mohegans, yeah. It's. I didn't plan on it. I never thought I'd be around this time, this long. But now, there are health issues that are hitting me now, and I haven't finished my work. Yeah. And maybe this record that you have that you are so touched by, and it seems to be it's speaking to people. We played up there in the last festival we played, and the people went gaga, So I don't know what to say about any of it, but I just told you what I've learned to live with. We come through here, we sing our song, nobody knows us, and we're gone. I have to go down with the ship. I'm not prepared to pick up soap and do some funny stuff. It's not in my DNA. Mm-hmm. And I got all that mixed up genealogy in there too. And so there must be a reason the Creator brought me through here. And Billy Higgins pulling my coat when I was getting ready to pull back in 2000, I realized that I must go down with the ship. And so be it, I suppose. I suppose our blessing of living in paradise with Dorothy is a beautiful thing. So, and I'm thankful, and I'm trying to prepare myself to go out. I remember we had a guru, our guru, Swami Ritajananda from Chennai, and he was leaving town, and he was in the hospital, and they had him hooked up to all these wires and stuff, and he was leaving, and he was going into Mahasamadhi, and all of a sudden these doctors and stuff, they start pulling the wires and start doing stuff, and he came down to them and he said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Well, we're trying to save you, keep you here." He said, "Can't you see that I'm trying to leave?" So a wise man. See, here's the thing: when you leave, make sure you go out awake, because if you go out conscious, you can make your matriculation to the other shore. As I understand it from the wisdom of the ancients, with modernity, you can go to the other shore without impediments.
Hearing you mention all these great jazzmen from Los Angeles, I was thinking about a bass player from here who passed not long ago, Henry Grimes. I was curious if you...
He wasn't from here. I knew him in New York. We played together a lot. I met him in New York, and he had an apartment up on the west side, and we'd go up and jam and play all the time. And he played a lot of gigs with me in New York in the early days. There was a coterie of young musicians, Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter and Tony Williams, Jack, Pete LaRocca. I knew Grimes. He was a sweetheart, yeah. And I also knew him after he had that. He came back out here and was on Skid Row or something. I ran into him later after he was being second coming, and he was still very sweet but quiet, Yeah, I knew him. Something I want to tell you about Buddy Collette is that he was one of the guys for the Underground Railroad. He would take people to another kind of place, meaning that he was playing on Groucho Marx's show. Groucho liked him, and they would go to lunch and stuff together. And he said one day a guy came over to Groucho and said, Groucho, big boy, from studios and stuff. He said, Groucho, where do you keep your money? Groucho said, I keep it in treasuries. And Buddy told me the story. And he said, well, doesn't pay very much, does it? Groucho says, it does if you have enough. So, meaning that Buddy told me that. And I always wanted to, I tried to dabble in investing and stuff like that with the little chump change that I've had. And it never went so far. But I'm thinking about that now with my little pennies and nickels and dimes. I just put them in treasuries and see if I can get Dorothy's stuff straightened out. But someday you need to talk to her because she did a film on me. Did you ever see it?
I didn't see
The
it.
Arrows into Infinity. Find it, write it, put it down in your phone.
I will.
Arrows into Infinity. It's very, very special. Booker's in there. Everybody's in there. Yeah. Buddy Collette's in there. Yeah. So people talk to me about writing a book all the time, but I watched her film at Big Ears in Knoxville. We played a concert with Jason Moran and Larry Grenadier and such, and Eric Harlan, and they showed Dorothy's film, and had tears all during the film throughout it, and it's 2 hours of. You can get it on Amazon or something. Arrows into Infinity. It's worth seeing. Yeah.
That's great.
A lot of history. Yeah.
There is a question I would like to ask, just because having grown up in South Los Angeles myself, and I always heard about Central Avenue.
Yeah.
Being as you're from Memphis and you had Beale Street and you were out here, in Central Avenue was still something of being alive.
Towards the end of it, yeah.
What was Central Avenue like, and how did that compare to a place like Beale Street?
I would go play these sessions. There was still some remnants of it. I'll leave you with something really interesting. Nat Cole was playing over there. Coleman Hawkins would play over there too. Dig this. Coleman Hawkins was living over there, and I don't know what that area is called now. It's over by SC, but it's a little loftier, up in the Adams district over there by the little leafy over there. I guess the white folks had moved further west or something. But Coleman was living in this, rooming house. It had this big old mansions. They turned them into rooms and stuff. And he would come home at night from playing on Central Avenue, and he had a Chrysler, and he'd leave his windows down in his car because, it's hot in the summer and stuff. And he'd have his horn on the back seat. And he'd go upstairs and go to bed. So what do you think happened to his horn?
Stolen.
Never. No, because that's Coleman Hawkins, and he's fueling the universe, and the pimps and the drug dealers don't mess with that horn because he's a holy man. His horn was never tampered with.
Wow.
That's deep to me, man. People know some things you don't mess with, It's like, don't put this stuff on the air because it's not presentable. And the stuff that I'm talking about, it's my life, and nobody's interested in it. But what I've seen,
I'm fascinated by it.
What I've seen and what I understand from the situation, I know what's going on, but I can't say what's going on because those who say don't, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. But I know what's happening. I know what time it is. That's why I live quietly, away from the maddening crowd, and I don't bother nobody, and I expect the same.
Can you talk about Gabor Szabo? You guys' work together, I love it
great.
so much.
He was a freedom fighter from Hungary, and he came over here, and I met him when I first joined Chico. Chico had him in the band for a couple of weeks, but Chico fired him and got some guy, journeyman guitar player from Philadelphia, to come. And so when Chico started up again, I was going to leave because he was playing straight horn. I had some good arrangement stuff, but I had this bee in my bonnet to to light the thing up. I had to play this indigenous art form, how it was given to me. And he said, no, you can stay. Please stay. He said, let's organize the band around what you want to do. We made those records, Passing Through, Man from Two Worlds, different stuff. Anyway, and he said, who you want in the band? I said, the first guy we're going to get is that guitar player you fired. It was Gabor. And I brought Albert Stinson in, who grew up with Bobby Hutcherson over in Pasadena. So I got those guys, and I brought a guy out from Memphis, Garnett Brown, a trombone player who played with us for a while. Yeah. And, it's like that. What was your question?
I just wanted
about Gabor.
Yeah, I just wanted in general thoughts
Gabor,
about
he was
Gabor.
great. He was a freedom fighter. He was out there in the streets in Hungary, came over here with a broken heart. They lived in a camp somewhere. He told me he came around the corner and there was his fiancée in the mud with some other guy, and he never healed from that. And he was devoted to the music. But later on, Fast Lane got him out here, But the beautiful thing is we like fast cars. We used to race Porsches and Ferraris and stuff. And we weren't no longer together, but he was living out here, and I'd moved back to here when I moved to Malibu in '69. And there used to be a freight company called Flying Tiger, and you could fly your car out from New York for $300. So I would take my car out to LaGuardia, Kennedy, wherever it was, and they'd put my Ferrari on a thing, and I'd fly out on TWA, and I go to the freight and get my car and drive up the coast, So, but one day something happened to my car, and I called Pietro Iruli, who ran Hollywood Sports Cars, and he came to straighten and help me out. And Gabor came with him because we were in different camps by that time, and we had such a beautiful reunion, and we made a record together. I can't remember what record. Huh?
Was that Waves?
Yeah, he's on that. But the best music so far has been Don's latest record with me. So I'm happy that in my lifetime I've been able to grow in the music and not bore myself or others,
From my ears, the way I hear you and Gabo is the same as you and Jason Moran. Like you and Jason Moran sound incredible to me.
I was playing a concert at Carnegie Hall with an Indian group I have with Zakir Hussain and Eric Harlan. And I didn't know Jason, but he came to that concert. And Jason came and he said, and so he told Eric he wanted to play with me. And I didn't really know his music. But then Jerry Allen was playing with me, who's a wonderful pianist. And she got her bookings mixed up, and she could only do half of a long European tour. So I didn't want to do that because, as I said, we come back, go exploring, come back not the same. But I want to build on what we did, what we were doing, and keep going higher. And so Eric called me and said, Jason wants to play with you, because he'd already said that. And I didn't say anything, and he said, he understands. And when he said that, I said, welcome. So that's when Jason came in 2006. And we've had some wonderful moments together, Kind of like what I had with Higgins, in that period, and in the earlier period with the original quartet, with Keith and Jack. That was special,
Did you get to play with Scott LaFaro?
Very much. Scott LaFaro and I were best friends. He also was a clarinet player. Did you know that?
I knew he came from a lyrical melodic.
Yeah, he could. Oh, yeah, yeah. He was fantastic. He set a standard that I haven't seen nobody surpass yet. And so, although I was in Memphis with all that rich community, Phineas Newborn and all of that, and then when I came out here, there was Ornette and Eric Dolphy and Gerald Wilson's big band with Harold Land and a lot of people. And then came these young guys, Don Cherry and Charlie Hayden and Scotty. Scotty and I played together a lot of gigs. And then he got a call to come back to New York. That's how he left here. You won't believe this. He got a call to play with a singer, Dick Himes, and it was going to be, Elvin was playing drums.
Come on with the
Yeah.
games. Wow.
So that was a trio back in Dick Himes. I don't know who was playing piano, but then later on he morphed into Bill Evans, and then he came out here on a tour later with Ornette. So but we played just gigs around town, and I had a gig at a place called the Dragon Wick in Pasadena for many years when I was in college, and Scotty and I would play there. Higgins, like
Was
that.
he playing that style
Yeah,
back then?
yeah.
Even?
He could do that. Yeah.
That's
He
incredible.
took that. You know what he did? One day he came over to my house near SC because I'd moved off that campus because I couldn't deal with that, and he had written out Bird solo to Just Friends.
Wow. On the bass.
No, for alto. He wrote it out for me. He was like a gift to me. Because there's such a beautiful solo that Bird plays on Just Friends. But Scotty, he was like one of a kind. As Booker was, as so many of these great saints are. Yeah, saints and sages. That's what came through here, and the country doesn't know its indigenous art form or appreciates it. And so sometimes it kind of blows me away. And so I live in the woods now, and I don't take no prisoners.
Did you meet the Beach Boys through meditation?
No, Beach Boys were fans of mine. They had heard that I was a meditator, and Mike Love is born on my same birthday. He's 3 years younger than me, March 15th. And they were seeking me out, and I didn't know their music. And then someone played Wild Honey for me, and I liked that. And then they played Pet Sounds, and that was it. And then Mike Love was always coming to Malibu with fruits and offerings and stuff, And so we became close. But I left Malibu. I was hanging out with Peter Fonda when he made that film, Easy Rider, and Larry Hagman, all that in the Colony, and Burgess Meredith. But when Peter made that film, we would go sailing. A guy named John Calley, who ran the studio, would give us his sailboat, and we would go sailing. And I didn't have it, so I left Malibu, and I didn't have any economics, so we were living in Big Sur, Dorothy and me, and we built a humble, simple house up there, Japanese country house. And Mike Love, they made Brian's studio available to me, and that's when I made some of those records that you may or may not know about. And the Beach Boys sang on some of those records with me. That record, Waves. Is it Waves or I don't know what it was. But anyway.
All Life is One. Aren't you singing on that? Yeah.
All Life is One. Yeah.
Warm Water. Yeah.
Warm Waters. Yeah. But they gave me their studio, an engineer, and Brian would be upstairs in his bed with his sandbox and stuff, and he'd come downstairs and start singing. He called the boys, and they'd all come over, and they sang on my records. So that was a beautiful thing. I had an idea years ago when I used to play, what's that club called over there? Shelley's Manhole or something. But anyway, and around the back street, there was in the alley back there was some little clubs back there were starting up in the Doors and Roger McGuinn. What was his group called? The Birds. So I liked the Birds. And so I was on Columbia, and they were on Columbia. So I told a guy named Billy James, who was a functionary at Columbia, and I said, man, I want to do a record with these guys, the Birds and me. And he took it upstairs, and they said, never. We're not going to let that happen,
Well, I'm sure Crosby was a fan. Did you get to know him?
Yeah, he was a big fan, David Crosby. And there's a friend, he was big friends with Spencer Dryden, who played drums with the Airplane. And Spencer and I used to play jazz gigs together.
Before he was in the Airplane, too, right?
Before he was in the Airplane, and he went up there, And they would always meet me whenever I came to town. He and Grace had hooked up. And they'd bring me offerings and stuff, put Peru on the table, and stuff like that.
One thing I wanted to go back to is you mentioned the Plantation Inn in West Memphis, Arkansas, excuse me. And is it true Elvis would come in?
He would come in every night to hear us play because he loved Calvin. And Calvin was a showman, too. he could play the guitar and he could jump real high in the sky and he'd shake his legs and stuff. And Elvis couldn't do that with the guitar, but he saw Calvin shaking his legs, so he copped that. And he was always at. There's a book called "Quiet as It's Kept," and I think Calvin wrote it about Phineas. And but Elvis is in there. He would come over to their house for dinner. Elvis was a truck driver. He drove some kind of. He was an iceman or electrician or something, electrical. He drove some kind of trucks, and but he was over there every night to hear us play. You know, yeah, he loved Calvin. Yeah.
Did it throw you when he became what he?
Yeah, it did throw me. One day in Montecito, where we lived, I ran into Priscilla at some big party the tennis buddy was having. He had great Gatsby estate and stuff like that. George Washington Smith, big old Spanish place. Anyway, I ran into a lot of people there, but Bhaskar Menon, do you know about him?
Yeah.
He ran, what was it called? It wasn't Capital, it was the whole EMI.
Yeah.
He ran EM. I said, man, how did you do that? He's Indian from India. I said, man, how did you do that? He said, oh, Charles, I just failed up. You know? It's cute that he could say that. Priscilla. So I saw Priscilla at this party. So I said, Priscilla, can I speak to you? And she looked at me and she said, this guy's hitting on me. You know, I mean, I could see in her eyes what she said, sure, yeah. So we went inside and talked, you know. I said, I'm from Memphis. She said, you're from Memphis? Yeah, she didn't believe it. I said, you know, I always had problems with this Elvis thing, you know. He took another man's song, you know, and he took it to the penthouse, you know, and capital gains and all that stuff. I said, how did he feel about that? And she said to me, he felt very inadequate. And she said he would go around to the black churches on Sunday and put wads of $100 bills in the offering. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. So when she said that, it kind of disarmed me, you know, because I didn't know him, except I used to record a lot over at Sun Records because they'd have us horns come in and play behind stuff. But I never played on his records, but he would come to the Plantation Inn every night to check us out. It was like, yeah, it was like looking behind the door. Yeah.
Was it a rough scene, like in the Memphis club? Did you like have to fight your way out sometimes?
Well, it was very rough in the sense that with Willie Mitchell, I was playing his band, and we had to come across the bridge at 120 miles an hour with the gendarmes or whatever you call those guys following us, you know, because the word had gotten out that we were socializing, you know, and they didn't like that, you know. Let me tell you something funny about Central Avenue. So Nat Cole was playing over there too, and one night the club he was playing in, Cab Calloway came in. And so he ran over to his table. Oh, Mr. Calloway, oh, please, I'm so happy to meet you. And he was bowing down and stuff, you know. And he said, I'm playing piano. He said, I'm just starting to sing, you know. Can you give me any advice, anything to help me, you know? He said, yes. Enunciate. And that took that to the bank.
He the greatest.
Mona Lisa, you know, he just took it. He just so he heard that. So that's what you have to do. Yeah, he did. Unbelievable. Yeah, someone referred to Nat in my record. I was shocked. The new record, Dorothy Harley or something sent me. The guy said, this record, he said, I love Nat Cole. He said, this record is smooth like Nat Cole, but it's not lightweight, you know. Yeah. So that's good to pull off something that it's kind of like we did in the 60s. You get under the transom before it's illegal. You know? Don, you could take this record a long way if you could find the right conduit and somebody like this brother here who cares. But there are people out, there are sensitives. See, my notion is that there's still sensitives in this world. Yeah. And that thing up on the board, on the wall there on the screen says Macintosh. Well, when we were young kids, we loved Macintosh and Marantz, and we were trying to get the best equipment because we loved to play live. And what we heard live, you couldn't hear on these little speakers and stuff, you know. And J.B. Lansing, they had this big Paragon speakers and stuff, you know. And so, because all my life we were trying to, the pursuit was to get up so close to the music, you know. And this record that we just made, it gets pretty close, you know. And I'm really, I'll stand by it.
Yeah, me too.
It's a beautiful record.
You heard it?
Oh yeah. It's a gorgeous record.
Thank you.
It is really. I mean, and you've made a lot of great music over the last decade and a half, but this record is very
big hat off to Don, because he heard it and he knew what it was, and he heard us when we were kids, you know, and he was a kid, and he likes truth and love, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, Charles. I mean, what I don't even.
That's magnificent.
Well, do what you can do with
Between
it.
you and Dorothy, it's an absolute history. It's just
you need to talk to
it's
Dorothy,
like
man. You need to talk to her.
You guys, this is.
You should watch the documentary she made.
Oh yeah, please get it. Yeah,
I'm going to this weekend.
Arrows into Infinity. Yeah, it's major. I just had tears the whole thing, man. And some of the comments from the people, they had a little Q&A after. Some of the comments were beyond, man. You know, I didn't know anybody was listening, so I shouldn't complain or I should just be thankful. Yeah.
Well, it's. I guess the point is, it's probably having a greater effect than you think. What you're doing.
Well, what does the guy say? Show me.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.